You're not worth the bonus, Claire. Be grateful you even have a job. The words hit me like a freight train barreling through Penn Station. I sat frozen in that sterile boardroom on the 37th floor of Madison Tower. The Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly behind Janice's perfectly coiffed head. HR Director Janice Wellington sat across from me like a queen on her throne. Her manicured fingers drummed against the mahogany table with calculated precision. CFO Richard Morrison leaned back in his leather chair, smirking. His expensive suit couldn't hide the smugness radiating from every pore. Company cost overruns require immediate budget adjustments, Janice announced coldly. Her voice carried the warmth of a January blizzard in Central Park. Your bonus will be reduced from $80,000 to $12,000. The number echoed in the silence like a gunshot in a cathedral. I had generated $4.2 million in revenue this quarter alone, more than any other salesperson in the company's 20-year history. My clients trusted me with portfolios worth hundreds of millions. Yet here I sat, being treated like yesterday's garbage. Richard's pen clicked repeatedly against his notepad, a maddening rhythm. These decisions aren't personal, Claire, he said with fake sympathy. The lie tasted bitter in the air between us. My fist clenched beneath the table, knuckles white with rage. The conference room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. 10 colleagues watched this public execution with varying degrees of interest. Some faces showed pity, others barely concealed satisfaction. Sarah from accounting actually looked pleased at my humiliation. Marcus from IT avoided eye contact, staring at his phone instead. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Furthermore, Janice continued, your expense account is being reviewed. Each word was a carefully aimed dagger to my professional reputation. Apparently, your client dinners have been deemed excessive. I had taken clients to steakhouses, closing deals worth millions. Those dinners generated more profit than half the department combined. But logic had no place in this kangaroo court. Richard shuffled his papers with theatrical importance. We need team players, not prima donnas, he declared. The irony was suffocating. I was the ultimate team player, carrying deadweight colleagues monthly. My sales numbers propped up their pathetic quarterly reports. Without me, their bonuses would disappear faster than snow in July. The room's silence stretched like taffy, thick and uncomfortable. Janice's smile never wavered, cold as a shark's. Any questions, Claire? Her tone suggested questions would be unwelcome and potentially career-ending. My throat felt like sandpaper, but I found my voice. No questions, I managed through gritted teeth. The words tasted like defeat and gasoline. Richard's smirk widened, victory dancing in his beady eyes. Excellent, he said, closing his portfolio with finality. Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped against the floor as people began standing. I remained seated, blood pounding in my ears. The Manhattan traffic below seemed impossibly distant from this corporate hellscape. Sarah whispered something to her cubicle neighbor, both women giggling softly. Marcus finally looked up, offering a sympathetic nod before leaving. The boardroom emptied like water down a drain. Soon, only Janice and I remained in the glass fishbowl. She gathered her papers with methodical precision. Claire, I hope you understand this isn't about your performance. Her voice dripped with false concern. It's about maintaining appropriate expectations across all departments. The corporate speak made my skin crawl. I stood slowly, my legs surprisingly steady. Of course, Janice. My voice sounded foreign, detached from my burning rage. I understand completely. She nodded approvingly, satisfied with my apparent compliance. Wonderful. Your revised compensation letter will arrive by Friday. I walked toward the door, each step measured and deliberate. My reflection in the glass wall looked composed, professional. Inside, a wildfire raged through every nerve and muscle. The hallway stretched before me like a gauntlet of whispers. Colleagues pretended to work while stealing glances at the defeated woman. Their keyboards clicked with renewed urgency, a symphony of fake productivity. I reached my corner office, my sanctuary overlooking the Hudson River. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Only then did I allow my facade to crack. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of my desk. The city sparkled below, indifferent to my corporate crucifixion. 23 years I had given this company. 23 years of 14-hour days and weekend calls. I had missed birthday parties, anniversaries, and family gatherings. All for a company that just declared me worthless. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated Claire Donovan. I opened my laptop and began typing furiously. The screen's blue glow reflected off my determined expression. Phone calls needed to be made. Lawyers needed to be contacted. Board members required immediate notification. Because what Janice and Richard didn't know would destroy them. 3 months ago, I had received a very interesting phone call. A phone call that would change everything. A phone call worth $72 million. The revenge they had just unleashed would be swift and devastating. They wanted to play hardball with Claire Donovan. Game on. 7 years earlier, I was a different woman entirely. A broken woman, clutching divorce papers in a studio apartment in Queens. Emily was only 3 years old. Her father vanished like smoke. Daddy's not coming back. Is he, Mommy? The question shattered what remained of my already fractured heart. Michael had walked out on a Tuesday, leaving behind debts and devastation. His note was 3 sentences long, cold as February concrete. I can't do this anymore, Claire. You're too ambitious, too driven, too much. Find someone who can handle your intensity. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night. Red eyes, tangled hair, a woman drowning in uncertainty. Emily slept peacefully in her crib, trusting me to fix everything. But I had no plan, no safety net, no wealthy parents. Just a business degree from Queens College, and desperate determination. The next morning, I called every investment firm in Manhattan. "We're not hiring," became the soundtrack of my existence. Rejection after rejection, door after door slamming shut. Finally, Morrison Financial agreed to interview me for junior sales. The salary was insulting, the commission structure nearly non-existent. But Emily needed diapers, formula, and a mother who wouldn't quit. My first day, Richard Morrison looked me up and down. "Don't expect special treatment because you're a woman," he sneered. I nodded, swallowing my pride like bitter medicine. The bullpen was a testosterone-fueled gladiator arena. Grown men shouted over each other, competing for alpha status. They called me sweetheart and on, with condescending smiles. Coffee runs became my unofficial secondary job description. "Claire, grab me a cappuccino while you're up. Make sure it's extra hot, dollface." I smiled, fetched coffee, and secretly plotted their professional demise. Evenings meant racing to Emily's daycare before closing time. The guilt gnawed at my stomach like acid. Other mothers picked up their children at reasonable hours. I arrived breathless, apologizing to irritated daycare workers. Emily would run to me, her face lighting up. "Mommy worked very hard today," she would say solemnly. Those words kept me going through the darkest months. Subway rides home became my mobile office. Laptop balanced precariously on my knees, researching client portfolios. Emily would color quietly beside me, her crayons scattered everywhere. Phone calls happened during her nap times and bath times. "Mrs. Johnson, I believe our portfolio strategy needs adjustment." Emily would splash happily while I closed million-dollar deals. My first major sale shocked everyone, especially Richard. $2.4 million in managed assets from a pharmaceutical executive. The bullpen fell silent when the commission check arrived. "Beginner's luck," Marcus from IT whispered behind my back. But luck had nothing to do with preparation and persistence. I had studied that client for 3 weeks straight. Every preference, every financial goal, every risk tolerance mapped meticulously. When we met, I spoke his language fluently. The second sale proved it wasn't luck at all. 4.1 million from a retired judge's estate. Then, 6.8 million from a tech entrepreneur. My commission checks grew larger, while male colleagues watched nervously. "She's just filling a diversity quota," Sarah from accounting muttered. The whispers stung, but my bank account disagreed with their assessment. Emily started kindergarten, the year I broke company records. 12 million in new business, surpassing every other salesperson. Richard's congratulations felt like swallowing broken glass. "Not bad for your second year," he said dismissively. That night, Emily drew a picture of us together. "You're the best mommy in the whole world," she declared. I tucked that drawing into my laptop bag. It traveled with me to every client meeting afterward. Year 3 brought even bigger victories and deeper resentment. My male colleagues formed an unofficial boys' club. Golf outings, happy hour invitations, networking events excluded me consistently. "Sorry, Claire, it's just a guy's thing," they would explain. But clients didn't care about their fragile egos. They cared about results, and I delivered results consistently. 21 million in managed assets by year 4. Regional recognition, industry awards, magazine interviews followed. Emily beamed with pride at school career day. "My mom helps rich people become even richer," she announced. The other children looked impressed, their parents even more so. But success bred jealousy among my supposed colleagues. Office politics became a minefield of whispered conspiracies. "She's probably sleeping with clients," someone suggested cruelly. I ignored the rumors, focusing on building my empire. Then David Chen joined the team in year 5. Fresh MBA from Columbia, eager and surprisingly respectful. While others dismissed me, David studied my techniques carefully. "Your client retention rate is incredible," he observed genuinely. "How do you maintain such strong relationships?" Finally, someone who saw me as a professional, not competition. We started collaborating on larger accounts together. David handled initial research while I managed client relationships. Our partnership generated unprecedented results for Morrison Financial. 38 million in new business our first year together. Richard couldn't ignore numbers that impressive, though he tried. "Team effort," he would tell potential investors. But David always corrected the record publicly. "Claire's the mastermind," he would say without hesitation. "I just follow her lead." His loyalty meant everything during those grueling years. Late nights became bearable with David's steady presence. Emily adored him, calling him Uncle David within months. He attended her school plays when work kept me away. "Every successful woman needs a trusted lieutenant," he would joke. But David was more than that. He was family. The family that Michael had abandoned years earlier. By year 6, I managed over 60 million in assets. Emily was 9, confident and brilliant like her mother. "When I grow up, I want to be exactly like you." Those words made every sacrifice worthwhile. But success painted a target on my back. Janice Wellington arrived as HR director that fall. Her mission seemed singular, undermining my growing influence. The writing was on the wall from day one. Now, sitting in my office after that humiliating meeting, everything crystallized. They had declared war on the wrong woman. The attacks came like clockwork after that boardroom humiliation. Janice scheduled a meeting the very next morning at 7 a.m. "Claire, we need you to train our new hires," she announced. Her smile was razor-sharp, cutting through any hope of recovery. 3 junior associates start Monday. They need immediate guidance. I stared at her across the conference table, calculating. "That's typically a senior manager position with additional compensation," I replied. Janice's laugh was hollow as an empty subway tunnel. Consider it professional development for your own career advancement. The euphemism tasted like garbage in the morning air. Of course, I said, swallowing my pride once again. I'm happy to help the team succeed. The 3 new hires were eager puppies, hungry for knowledge. Jessica from Harvard, Michael from Wharton, and Stephen from Columbia. All fresh-faced, all convinced they were destined for greatness. I spent 60 hours that first week teaching them everything. Client management, portfolio analysis, negotiation tactics, relationship building. Every technique I had developed through blood, sweat, and tears. They absorbed my knowledge like sponges soaking up spilled wine. Meanwhile, my own client meetings got pushed to evenings. Phone calls stretched past Emily's bedtime regularly now. "Mommy, when will you be done working?" she asked sadly. The question pierced my heart like a rusty nail. "Soon, baby girl," I promised, knowing it was probably untrue. David watched this exploitation with growing frustration. "They're using you as unpaid labor," he said during lunch, while collecting full salaries themselves. But speaking up meant painting an even larger target. I trained those kids for 3 months without extra compensation. Jessica landed her first $1 million client in week 4. The local newspaper interviewed her about being a rising star. "Morrison Financial really knows how to develop young talent," she gushed. My name was nowhere in that glowing article. Richard scheduled the quarterly client presentation for December 15th. Our biggest investors would attend, including pension fund managers. "This is our chance to showcase Morrison's bright future," he announced. I had prepared extensively, knowing my track record spoke volumes. 68 million in managed assets, highest retention rate company-wide. The presentation would vindicate everything I had sacrificed. But Richard had different plans entirely. The conference room filled with serious men in expensive suits. Pension fund executives, insurance company representatives, and private wealth managers. I sat quietly as Richard began his polished performance. "Morrison Financial continues leading through innovative client relationship management," he declared. Then came the knife, sharp and perfectly aimed. "Claire may smile pretty for our clients," he said dismissively. The room chuckled at his casual sexism. "But she doesn't close $1 million deals." My blood turned to ice in my veins. "I do." The lie hung in the air like toxic gas. Every person in that room could verify my actual numbers. But Richard continued his fictional narrative with absolute confidence. "Women bring certain soft skills to client interactions," he explained. "But when serious money is involved, clients prefer working with men." The pension fund managers nodded approvingly. I sat frozen, watching my reputation get assassinated publicly. David's face was red with barely contained rage. He started to speak, but I shook my head slightly. This wasn't his battle to fight, not yet anyway. After the meeting, clients approached Richard directly for future consultations. My biggest accounts were being reassigned without any discussion. "Nothing personal, Claire," Richard said with fake sympathy. "Just giving clients what they actually want." That night, I cried in my car outside Emily's school. 10 years of building relationships, destroyed in 30 minutes. David found me there, mascara running down my cheeks. "We should sue them into bankruptcy," he said furiously. Sexual discrimination, hostile workplace, defamation, everything. But lawsuits take years and cost fortunes. Emily needed stability, not prolonged legal battles. I wiped my eyes and drove home silently. The next morning brought unexpected news that changed everything. Janice called an emergency all-hands meeting at 9 a.m. The entire company crowded into the main conference room. "Morrison Financial has received an acquisition offer," she announced dramatically. "Blackstone Capital Group wants to purchase our entire operation." The room buzzed with nervous energy and whispered conversations. "This represents a significant opportunity for our organization," Richard added. But his smile seemed forced, almost desperate. Mergers meant layoffs, restructuring, and massive uncertainty. Everyone would be evaluated. Some would be eliminated entirely. We'll keep you updated as negotiations progress, Janice concluded. The meeting dissolved into anxious clusters of worried employees. I walked back to my office, mind racing. Acquisition meant change of control clauses could potentially activate. Those mysterious legal provisions that few people actually understood. I had signed my contract 7 years ago. The legal language was dense, filled with incomprehensible jargon. But somewhere in those pages might be protection. That afternoon, I overheard Janice talking to Richard outside. Anyone with change of control protection could walk away rich. Her voice carried down the hallway like a whispered secret. Thank God we've been careful about who gets those clauses. Richard laughed coldly. The dinosaurs from the early days might have them, but none of our current problems do. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding frantically. Current problems clearly meant me. But I wasn't current at all. I was one of those early-day dinosaurs. That night, I dug through my home filing cabinet. Years of contracts, performance reviews, and legal documents scattered everywhere. Emily helped me search, treating it like treasure hunting. What are we looking for exactly, Mommy? Something that might save us both, I whispered. Finally, buried beneath tax returns from 2018, I found it. My original employment contract, thick and yellowed with age. Page 12, Section 4, Subsection C. Change of Control Severance Protection Clause. The words swam before my tired eyes. In the event of company acquisition or merger, it read, employee shall receive compensation equal to 3 years' base salary, plus accelerated vesting of all bonus and commission structures. My hands trembled as I calculated the numbers. 3 years' salary plus 7 years of accumulated bonuses. The total was staggering, almost impossible to believe. $72 million. The light at the end of this very dark tunnel. The memory came flooding back like a broken dam. 7 years ago, Richard's predecessor had called me into his office. James Patterson was old school, a gentleman from a different era. Claire, your numbers are exceptional, he had said warmly. We want to promote you to senior vice president. I was stunned, barely able to process the words. Single mothers from Queens didn't usually climb this high. There's substantial salary increase and equity participation, James continued. But I had learned not to trust corporate promises. I'd like some protection in my contract, I said carefully. James raised his eyebrows, intrigued by my boldness. What kind of protection are you thinking about? I had done my homework, studying industry standard agreements. Change of control clause, I replied with manufactured confidence. In case the company gets sold or merged. James laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine appreciation. Smart woman, he said, nodding approvingly. Most people never think that far ahead. He buzzed his secretary to bring contract templates. What percentage seems fair for your contribution level? I had prepared for this question extensively. Industry standard is 2 to 3 years base compensation, plus accelerated vesting of all accumulated bonuses and commissions. James scribbled notes on his legal pad thoughtfully. Given your track record, 3 years seems appropriate. The lawyer spent 2 weeks drafting the final language, page after page of dense legal terminology and protection clauses. I studied every word during sleepless nights at home. Emily would sleep beside me while I highlighted important sections. Mommy, why do you read so much? She asked. Knowledge is power, baby girl, I whispered back. The signing ceremony felt surreal, almost dreamlike. James shook my hand firmly after I signed. This protects both of us, he explained kindly. You get security, we get your continued loyalty. 6 months later, James retired to his Florida estate. Richard Morrison slithered into the CEO position immediately. His first action was reviewing all existing senior contracts. "Some of these legacy agreements are far too generous," he complained. "But legally binding contracts aren't easily broken or modified." My change of control clause was ironclad, legally bulletproof. Richard tried pressuring me to renegotiate several times. "Market conditions have changed, Claire," he would argue. "These old agreements don't reflect current economic realities." I smiled politely and refused every single attempt. "I'm quite happy with my existing contract terms," I replied. His frustration was delicious, though I kept it hidden. Years passed, and everyone forgot about those early agreements. New employees received standard contracts without special protections. Richard and Janice assumed I was just another vulnerable employee. Their assumption would prove catastrophically expensive. Now, sitting in my kitchen with that contract spread out, Emily was asleep upstairs, trusting me to solve everything. The numbers were even more staggering than I remembered. Base salary of $200,000 annually, times 3 years. $600,000 in guaranteed severance pay alone. But the real treasure was in the bonus acceleration clause. 7 years of accumulated performance bonuses, fully vested immediately. Commission overrides, equity participation, everything accelerated at once. The calculator on my phone couldn't handle numbers this large. I pulled out my laptop and opened Excel carefully. Each formula built upon the last, creating a mathematical masterpiece. Year 1 bonuses, Year 2 commissions, Year 3 equity. Every client I had landed, every deal I had closed. Every late-night phone call and weekend client dinner. All of it crystallized into one magnificent number. $72,400,600. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just money, it was complete vindication. Financial independence for Emily and me forever. But more importantly, it was justice served ice cold. I printed 3 copies of the contract and calculations. One for my safety deposit box, one for home. The third would go to the best lawyer money could buy. Sleep was impossible that night, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I stared at the ceiling, planning every detail carefully. This required surgical precision, not emotional outbursts. One mistake could invalidate everything I had discovered. The next morning, David noticed my strange energy immediately. "You look different today," he observed during our coffee break. Like someone who just won the lottery. His intuition was frighteningly accurate as always. I pulled him into an empty conference room. "David, I need to tell you something incredible." His eyes widened as I explained my discovery. The contract, the calculations, the 72 million revelation. "Holy shit, Claire," he whispered, stunned into profanity. "This changes absolutely everything." His excitement was infectious, but I remained cautious. "Nobody can know about this yet," I warned. "One word to the wrong person destroys everything." David nodded solemnly, understanding the stakes completely. "What's your next move?" I had already decided during those sleepless hours. Find the best employment lawyer in Manhattan. Someone who specializes in change of control disputes. Someone who can navigate corporate warfare professionally. David pulled out his phone immediately. His brother-in-law was a partner at a prestigious firm. "Marcus Ondel's executive compensation disputes," he explained. "He's expensive, but absolutely ruthless when necessary." That afternoon, I called Marcus Steinberg's office. "I need a consultation regarding contract enforcement," I said. His secretary scheduled me for the following morning. "Bring all relevant documentation," she instructed. "Mr. Steinberg charges $500 per hour." I smiled at my reflection in the office window. Soon, $500 would seem like pocket change. That evening, Emily asked why I seemed so happy. "Did something good happen at work, Mommy?" I hugged her tight, breathing in her innocence. "Something very good is about to happen, sweetheart." We might not have to worry about money anymore. She looked up with those trusting brown eyes. Does that mean you can come to my school play? The question broke my heart and strengthened my resolve simultaneously. Yes, baby girl. I promised with absolute certainty. Mommy will be at every single play from now on. As she slept that night, I reviewed my contract again. Every clause, every subsection, every legal protection James had included. This wasn't just about the money, though $72 million helped. This was about respect, recognition, and righteous justice. Richard and Janice had declared war on the wrong woman. Tomorrow, I would begin preparing my nuclear response. Marcus Steinberg confirmed what I already suspected after reviewing my contract. This is airtight, he said, adjusting his expensive glasses. Change of control clauses from that era were bulletproof. His corner office overlooked Central Park, success radiating from every surface. Your payout is legally guaranteed, he continued with professional confidence. But corporations will fight dirty to avoid paying. I nodded, understanding the battlefield ahead completely. What should I expect from them? Marcus leaned back in his leather chair thoughtfully. They'll try manufacturing cause for termination, he explained. Performance issues, policy violations, anything to break your contract. The strategy was predictable but potentially devastating if successful. Document everything, Marcus advised seriously. Record conversations when legally permissible. Build an unshakable case for their retaliation patterns. I left his office with renewed purpose and tactical clarity. The war was officially beginning, but I held superior weapons. Monday morning brought Janice's opening salvo right on schedule. Claire, we need to discuss your recent performance decline, she announced. Her tone suggested this was a foregone conclusion. I sat across from her, smartphone recording in my purse. New York was a one-party consent state for recordings. I'm not aware of any performance issues, I replied calmly. Janice shuffled papers with theatrical importance. Client satisfaction scores have dropped significantly, she claimed. The lie was breathtaking in its audacity. My client retention rate remained highest in the company. Could you show me those specific scores? I asked politely. Janice's smile faltered momentarily before recovering. I don't have them with me today. But I assure you, the data is concerning. I nodded as if accepting her fabricated evidence. I'd love to review those numbers when available. The meeting ended with vague threats disguised as guidance. That afternoon, Richard piled on additional pressure systematically. Claire, I need you working evenings this week, he demanded. The Henderson account requires immediate attention. Henderson was my smallest client, barely worth $50,000 annually. But refusing would give them ammunition for insubordination charges. Of course, Richard, I said with manufactured enthusiasm. I'm always happy to prioritize client needs. His smirk suggested he was enjoying this psychological warfare. The late nights stretched into grueling marathons of manufactured urgency. Emily ate dinner alone while I pretended to work. David brought me coffee and moral support regularly. They're trying to break you down, he observed accurately. Classic corporate harassment disguised as dedication requirements. But every forced overtime session was recorded and documented. Marcus would need evidence of their escalating retaliation patterns. Thursday brought the most vicious attack yet from Janice. She called me into her office at 4:55. Claire, sit down, she commanded with obvious satisfaction. We need to address your attitude problem. I remained silent, letting hair dye deeper holes. Your colleagues have expressed concerns about your cooperation. Another fabrication, since David was my only real ally. They feel you've become difficult to work with. I nodded thoughtfully, as if considering her feedback seriously. Could you provide specific examples? I asked innocently. Janice's frustration was becoming visible around her painted smile. It's more about general impressions, she said vaguely. Professional demeanor, team collaboration, that sort of thing. The corporate speak was getting more desperate by the minute. I appreciate the feedback, I replied with false sincerity. I'll certainly reflect on ways to improve. But Janice wasn't finished with her character assassination yet. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing into predatory slits. Women like you should be thankful, she hissed venomously. You're replaceable. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. I held her gaze steadily, letting silence stretch between us. Fire blazed behind my calm exterior, but I showed nothing. This was the moment Marcus had predicted would come. The unguarded admission of discriminatory intent, recorded perfectly. I understand completely, I said with manufactured gratitude. Thank you for your honesty. Janice looked satisfied, believing she had broken my spirit. If only she knew about the nuclear weapon hidden nearby. That evening, David found me at Murphy's pub near the office. I was nursing a whiskey, processing the day's psychological warfare. You look like someone who survived a battlefield, he observed. Which isn't far from the truth. I showed him the recording of Janice's threat. His face darkened as her words played through my earbuds. Women like you should be thankful. You're replaceable. That ignorant witch, he muttered angrily. She just handed you the smoking gun. We ordered another round, dark humor creeping into our conversation. To Janice Wellington, I raised my glass mockingly. The most helpful enemy I've ever encountered. David clinked his glass against mine. To corporate idiots who don't read contracts carefully. We laughed bitterly at the absurdity of our situation. Two professionals hiding in a bar, plotting against institutional stupidity. What's your timeline now? David asked seriously. Marcus wants me to let them continue documenting their stupidity. The more evidence we gather, the stronger our position becomes. But the merger was progressing rapidly, according to office gossip. Blackstone Capital was conducting due diligence aggressively. 6 weeks maximum, I estimated carefully. Then the change of control provisions automatically activate. David's eyes gleamed with anticipation. 72 million reasons to be patient. Plus the satisfaction of watching them implode completely. That night, I tucked Emily into bed carefully. She looked up with those trusting brown eyes. Mommy, are the mean people at work being nicer? Her innocence pierced my heart like a gentle knife. Soon, sweetheart, I promised with absolute certainty. Very soon, the mean people won't matter anymore. I kissed her forehead and retreated to my home office. 3 weeks of recorded conversations, documented harassment, discriminatory statements. Marcus would be thrilled with our evidence collection. But more importantly, Janice and Richard were about to learn something. You don't humiliate a woman who holds $72 million. Especially when she's been documenting your every stupid move. The final phase of this war was approaching rapidly. And I couldn't wait to detonate my carefully constructed bomb. The email arrived on a Friday morning at exactly 9 a.m. Morrison Financial employees stared at their screens in collective shock. Blackstone Capital Group has completed acquisition of Morrison Financial. The merger is officially finalized, effective immediately. Richard called an emergency celebration meeting within 30 minutes. The main conference room buzzed with nervous excitement. Champagne bottles appeared from somewhere, along with plastic cups. Today marks a new chapter in our company's evolution, Richard announced. His smile was broader than the Hudson River. Janice stood beside him like a conquering general. Our leadership team will remain intact under the new structure. She raised her champagne cup triumphantly. To continuity, stability, and our bright future together. Employees toasted half-heartedly, uncertain about their job security. I sat in the back corner, practically invisible. My smartphone was recording everything for Marcus and posterity. David caught my eye from across the room. His subtle nod confirmed our shared understanding of what came next. We've weathered every storm, Richard continued his victory speech. survived every challenge through superior leadership and strategic vision. The irony was delicious, considering what awaited him upstairs. Marcus had timed the delivery perfectly for maximum psychological impact. While Richard celebrated, legal papers were being delivered. Registered mail, signature required, absolutely unavoidable. So raise your glasses to Morrison Financial, Richard concluded. Now a proud subsidiary of Blackstone Capital Group. Polite applause rippled through the nervous crowd. I slipped out during the continued celebration. My heart pounded like subway trains beneath Manhattan. 7 years of humiliation were about to be avenged completely. The elevator ride to my office felt eternal. Each floor marked another step toward total vindication. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Documents delivered to Richard and Janice simultaneously. Contract enforcement begins immediately. Expect fireworks within the hour. I sat at my desk, pretending to work normally. But my attention focused entirely on the sounds upstairs. Richard's office was directly above mine on the 40th floor. Janice's corner office occupied the same general area. 23 minutes after Marcus's text, the explosion began. Richard's voice echoed through the thin ceiling above. What the hell is this? Papers rustled frantically, followed by heavy footsteps. Get Janice in here immediately. His assistant's heels clicked rapidly down the hallway. Janice needs to see this right now. The urgency in his voice was absolutely delicious. Muffled conversation continued for several minutes above. Then Janice's shriek pierced the corporate calm. This can't be real. Her voice cracked, like breaking glass. $72 million? For Claire Donovan? My name spoken with such horror was incredibly satisfying. Phone calls began immediately. Frantic and desperate. Get our legal team on conference call now. Find out how this contract was ever approved. There has to be some way to challenge this. But Marcus had already anticipated their every desperate move. My contract was legally bulletproof, professionally crafted, ironclad. James Patterson had been thorough in protecting his best performer. More voices joined the chaos upstairs. Emergency meetings, crisis management, damage control consultants. The sound of corporate panic was absolutely beautiful. David appeared at my door, grinning broadly. The entire executive floor is in complete meltdown. Richard's throwing papers. Janice is hyperventilating. Legal is saying the contract is completely valid. I nodded calmly, savoring every word. How much does Blackstone know about this situation? David's smile widened even further. They just discovered they inherited a $72 million obligation. Apparently, nobody mentioned it during due diligence. The oversight was spectacularly expensive for everyone involved. Blackstone would demand answers. Heads would roll accordingly. My desk phone rang with Richard's number displayed. I let it ring 4 times before answering professionally. Claire Donovan speaking. His voice was barely controlled rage mixed with desperation. Claire, we need to talk immediately. My office. Right now. I checked my lipstick in my compact mirror. I'll be right up, Richard. The elevator ride felt like ascending to corporate heaven. Each floor marked another step toward complete vindication. Richard's office door stood wide open when I arrived. Janice paced frantically behind his massive desk. Legal documents covered every available surface like fallen leaves. Sit down, Claire, Richard commanded through gritted teeth. His face was pale as February snow. I settled into the chair across from his desk. The same chair where I'd been humiliated countless times. But today felt magnificently different from all previous encounters. This contract, Janice stammered, waving papers frantically. When did you negotiate these terms? Her voice quivered with barely controlled panic. 7 years ago, during my promotion, I replied calmly. James Patterson approved all the terms personally. Richard's jaw clenched like a steel trap. "These numbers are absolutely impossible," he declared desperately. "No company pays this kind of severance." I smiled for the first time in months. Apparently, this company does. According to legally binding contract language. Janice slumped into her chair, defeated and deflated. $72 million, she whispered hoarsely. For one employee. The number seemed to echo in the sudden silence. I stood slowly, savoring this moment of absolute triumph. "Remember when you said I wasn't worth the bonus?" My voice was steady, powerful, completely confident. Richard and Janice stared at me with undisguised horror. Turns out, I was worth $72 million. The words hung in the air like perfect justice. Years of humiliation, discrimination, and psychological warfare crystallized into this moment. "My lawyer will handle all remaining details," I continued professionally. "Blackstone's legal team has already confirmed payment terms. Funds will transfer within 5 business days." I walked toward the door with measured steps. "Oh, and Richard?" I turned back with my most brilliant smile. "You were right about one thing. Women like me should be grateful. Grateful for lawyers who read contracts very carefully." The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. 40 floors below, David waited with champagne and celebration. But first, I had a phone call to make. "Emily, sweetheart? Mommy has wonderful news. We're going to Disney World." The news broke like a financial tsunami across Wall Street. Morrison Financial employee receives record $72 million severance package. The headline screamed from every business publication in Manhattan. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times covered the story extensively. Corporate contract oversight costs. Blackstone, massive unexpected payout. The business press devoured every detail with predatory hunger. Within 48 hours, I became New York's most famous corporate story. My phone rang constantly with interview requests and media inquiries. "Miss Donovan, how does it feel to be suddenly wealthy? What message does this send to other working women?" I declined most interviews, preferring private celebration with Emily. But the story took on a life entirely beyond our control. Morrison Financial's offices became a circus of reporters and cameras. Employees couldn't enter the building without dodging interview requests. "Did you know about Claire Donovan's contract? Were you aware of the potential severance exposure?" My former colleagues navigated the media storm with varying degrees of success. Sarah from accounting suddenly claimed we were close friends. "Claire was always destined for greatness," she told reporters. The same woman who had whispered behind my back for years. Marcus from IT gave a different perspective entirely. "She worked harder than anyone else in the company. Management never appreciated what they had until it was gone." His honesty was refreshing among the revisionist narratives emerging. But David's quote in the Wall Street Journal captured everything perfectly. "Claire Donovan is the most talented professional I've ever known. She earned every penny of that $72 million. The business community began dissecting my career trajectory obsessively. Harvard Business Review published an analysis titled The Donovan Effect: How One Woman's Contract Changed Corporate Severance Forever. Employment lawyers across the country started recommending similar protection clauses. Every executive should have change of control provisions, they advised. My unintentional impact on industry practices was surprisingly gratifying. Meanwhile, Blackstone Capital conducted its own internal investigation. How had due diligence missed such an enormous financial liability? The answer pointed directly to Richard and Janice's deliberate oversight. They had hidden my contract from acquisition lawyers, hoping the merger would eliminate me before activation occurred. Their deception cost Blackstone $72 million in unexpected expenses. Corporate consequences arrived swiftly and without mercy. Richard Morrison was terminated for cause within 1 week. His severance package disappeared due to contractual breach violations. Janice Wellington faced similar disgrace and professional destruction. HR director positions dried up across the financial industry. Word spread quickly about their discriminatory practices and legal incompetence. Both became cautionary tales in corporate management circles. "Remember the Morrison financial disaster," executives would whisper. "That's what happens when you underestimate your employees." But my story was just beginning its most meaningful chapter. I established the Margaret Donovan Scholarship Foundation within 3 months. Named after my mother, who had cleaned office buildings nightly. She died believing her daughter could achieve anything through education. The foundation supports young women entering business and finance programs. Full scholarships, mentorship programs, and career development resources. Education opens doors that poverty tries to keep locked, our mission statement read. The first scholarship recipients were announced at a Manhattan gala. 12 brilliant young women from working-class backgrounds like mine. Their faces glowed with possibility and determination. "You represent the future," I told them that evening. "Never apologize for being ambitious, intelligent, or strong." Emily sat beside me, taking in every word carefully. At 11 years old, she understood this moment's historical significance. "Mommy, are you helping other girls like you helped us?" Her question brought tears to my eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered back. "We're helping them climb mountains they didn't know existed." 6 months later, I opened my own investment advisory firm. Donovan Capital Management occupied a corner suite overlooking Central Park. The irony wasn't lost on anyone familiar with my story. From corporate victim to independent financial powerhouse in 1 year. My first clients were pension funds and institutional investors. The same people who had witnessed Richard's public humiliation of me. Now, they sought my expertise and trusted my judgment completely. "Claire Donovan understands money like few people ever will," they said. Success felt different when built on respect rather than tolerance. Emily visited my new office on a crisp October afternoon. She marveled at the mahogany furniture and panoramic city views. "This is really yours, Mommy?" Her amazement was infectious and deeply moving. "Yes, baby girl," I said, pulling her close. "And nobody can ever take it away from us." We stood together at the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan spread below us like a glittering promise. "Emily, I want you to remember something very important." She looked up with those trusting brown eyes. "You'll never have to apologize for being strong. Strength is a gift, not something to hide or diminish. Use it to build the life you want." She nodded solemnly, absorbing wisdom beyond her years. "Will I be strong like you, Mommy?" The question pierced my heart with beautiful pain. "You already are, sweetheart. You just don't know it yet." That evening, I received an unexpected email from James Patterson. He had read about my success from his Florida retirement. "Claire, I always knew you were destined for greatness." That contract was the best investment Morrison Financial ever made, even if they were too stupid to realize it. His words completed a circle that began 7 years earlier. The man who had believed in me first was witnessing my triumph. As Emily slept that night, I reflected on our incredible journey. From a broken single mother to financial independence and beyond. The price had been steep, the battles often brutal. But every humiliation had led to this moment of absolute victory. Richard and Janice had unknowingly created their own destruction. Their cruelty had awakened a sleeping giant they couldn't control. And that giant was now helping other women climb mountains. The best revenge, it turned out, was living magnificently well, while lifting others up along the way. 1 year later, I stood on the rooftop of my penthouse apartment. The Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly before me, blazing with possibility. 47 floors above the streets where I once struggled. The October wind whipped through my hair as I reflected. From single mother on food stamps to financial independence. The journey felt surreal, like watching someone else's movie. Emily appeared beside me, now 12 and impossibly wise. "Mommy, do you miss the old apartment in Queens?" Her question surprised me with its thoughtful complexity. I considered her words while watching helicopters navigate between skyscrapers. I miss who we were becoming, I answered honestly. But I love who we've become. She nodded solemnly, understanding layers beyond her years. David joined us on the terrace, carrying 3 cups of hot chocolate. The city looks different from up here, he observed. Less threatening, more like a kingdom to conquer. His friendship had anchored me through the darkest corporate storms. Now he served as Chief Operating Officer of Donovan Capital. The 3 of us formed an unlikely but unbreakable family. Bound by loyalty, tested by adversity, strengthened by victory. Tell me the story again, Emily requested with familiar eagerness. She never tired of hearing about the $72 million contract. Once upon a time, I began with theatrical flair. There was a woman who refused to apologize for excellence. David chuckled, knowing this ritual brought Emily comfort and inspiration. The story had become legend in our small circle. How determination and careful contract reading conquered corporate cruelty. And the mean people? Emily prompted, anticipating her favorite part. Richard and Janice learned that underestimating people costs money. Lots and lots of money. She giggled at the justice of it all. Business magazines still featured articles about the Morrison financial disaster. Harvard Business School created a case study around my contract. The Donovan Clause became standard terminology in employment law. My unintentional contribution to workplace protection felt deeply satisfying. But the real victory was watching other women find their voices. The scholarship recipients sent updates regularly about their progress. Maria from the Bronx landed an internship at Goldman Sachs. Jessica from Detroit earned acceptance to Wharton's MBA program. 12 young women climbing mountains I had helped reveal. Their success multiplied my own satisfaction exponentially. Do you think they remember you? Emily asked about Richard and Janice. The question hung in the crisp autumn air. I smiled, knowing the answer with absolute certainty. They remember me every single day, sweetheart. Some people you never forget, especially when they cost you everything. Richard had moved to Phoenix, selling insurance to pay bills. His LinkedIn profile looked pathetic compared to past corporate glory. Janice worked for a small accounting firm in New Jersey. Her dreams of executive power vanished with Morrison Financial. They had become cautionary tales whispered in corporate boardrooms. Remember what happened to Morrison's leadership team? That's what you get for discriminating against top performers. Their professional destruction was complete and entirely self-inflicted. Meanwhile, Donovan Capital managed over $200 million in assets. My client list included Fortune 500 companies and pension funds. The same institutional investors who had witnessed my humiliation. Now they sought my advice on portfolio strategy and risk management. Success tastes sweeter when seasoned with vindication. Emily started 9th grade at the prestigious Brearley School. Her teachers praised her confidence and analytical thinking. She has remarkable poise for someone so young, they reported. Almost like she's seen adversity and emerged stronger. If only they knew about our journey from Queen's studio apartment. About nights when dinner meant peanut butter sandwiches and hope. About a mother who worked 18-hour days to change everything. But Emily carried those lessons without wearing them as burdens. Strength had become her birthright, not her punishment. The Margaret Donovan Scholarship Foundation expanded to 5 cities. We funded 50 young women annually now, with growing demand. Board meetings brought together successful businesswomen from various industries, all united by shared experiences of fighting for recognition. Your mother would be proud, David said during one meeting. She cleaned offices so you could eventually own them. The symmetry was beautiful and deeply meaningful to me. From poverty to philanthropy, in one remarkable generation. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Steinberg. Another client wants the Donovan Clause in their contract. You've changed employment law forever. His message reminded me that impact extends beyond personal victory. Corporate America now respected change of control provisions. Thanks to one woman who insisted on protecting herself legally, as midnight approached, we retreated to the apartment's warmth. Emily fell asleep reading about business strategies for teenagers. David stayed for our traditional Friday night planning session. "What's next for the Donovan Empire?" he asked playfully. I looked out at the glittering city below. Every light represented dreams, struggles, and potential victories. "We keep climbing," I said with quiet determination. "And we pull others up behind us." The woman who had once trembled in corporate boardrooms was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own worth completely, who refused to accept other people's limitations as permanent truth. The journey from victim to victor had taken 7 years, but the transformation was worth every humiliating meeting. Every late-night subway ride with Emily sleeping nearby, every moment of doubt conquered by stubborn perseverance. As I prepared for bed, I reflected on revenge's true nature. Not the dramatic destruction you see in movies, but the quiet satisfaction of exceeding every expectation, of turning pain into power and obstacles into opportunities. Richard and Janice had tried to break me professionally. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. A woman who knew exactly what she was worth and was willing to collect every penny owed. I smiled at my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The same face that had once shown fear and uncertainty now radiated confidence, success, and unshakable self-worth. Funny thing about revenge, I thought to myself. Sometimes you don't have to destroy them at all. You just have to win so big they never forget your name. And Claire Donovan was a name they would remember forever.